I always find that like with Zoom versus in person and stuff like that, there's a time and a place for it.
Right.
But I think with the Zoom stuff, if you can avoid it, it's good, because otherwise it just starts to look like every single video and
Right.
podcast, it just starts to look the same. It's like you got 3 or 4 boxes,
Right.
and
Yeah.
since you're local, I figured.
Yeah, no, it works out good. Yeah, like I said, it's kind of fun doing the local stuff too, because you can. It's always fun being face to face with people, and
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting used to doing stuff with screens and doing stuff on that, and it's cool to be able to. I would never be able to do that podcast with those guys in Saskatoon, outside
Right.
of doing something via video call. So it's kind of cool opportunity.
So did you grow up around here then?
I grew up in Roseau. If you're familiar.
Oh yeah, sure.
So I moved down south here.
Yeah.
And I was guiding out. I was telling my clients, like, yeah, I grew up actually in northern Minnesota. And they'd look at me and be like, this is northern Minnesota. I was like, oh, no.
No.
You got another few hours. They're like, what? There's more northern Minnesota than this?
Yeah. Roseau Rams, right?
Yep, Roseau Rams.
Did you play hockey then?
Yes, that's all. I either get 1 or 2 questions when I go.
Yeah.
Number 1 is, did you play hockey? And
right.
Yep, I did play hockey.
Uh-huh.
And, baseball was definitely my passion.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed hockey too. But yeah, hockey is a big one. That one, and then did you fish Lake of the Woods? Those are the 2 questions I get when I take one from Roseau.
And it's probably yes and yes for you,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Or they'll say, oh, Roseville. Yeah, I know where that's at.
Yeah,
I'm like,
no, not quite so much. Yeah.
So.
Did Roseau, and they made a very interesting choice going back to whenever it was, the 90s and all that stuff, when they split into the 2 A and double A, that Roseau decided to stay in the double A.
Yep.
Yeah. And what was the thought process on that?
I don't know. I think it was just because at the time I think Roseau, I could be mistaken, but Roseau had the most state championships in the state.
Right.
And so I think they're like, well, why would we go down to single A if we've already got the most state championships? We want to play the best of the best if we're wanting to be the best kind of thing. And Warroad chose to drop down.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So it's funny that there's still that intense rivalry, because you'd think when it's not state tournament on the line or sections or any playoff implications, really, it's lose some of the luster. But the rivalry is still alive and well. I will say that.
So did you get to play in those varsity games against Warroad?
Oh yeah. Yep. And then
what's that like to be in?
Wild. Yeah. Depending on where you're at too. Like, the Warroad rink is gigantic, and the gardens there is so fun and just its own experience. It feels like a little bigger, and then Roseau's like the classic barn. And that was always wild. And so they were always very intense, and there was a lot of fun memories doing that too, because it was it's a different world.
Is it
Minnesota high school hockey?
I know, but especially like that rivalry is one of the big ones, especially. And so is there like actually like bad blood there, or is it more just more of a friendly rivalry type of thing?
Oh, there's definitely bad blood, I would say. And like it's like ingrained to you as a kid, as like Warroad's the worst. Like, And then as you get older, you start to realize, or like you go to college with some of these guys. Like, oh, you're not the evil person I thought you were. You like halftime become buddies with them. But it was just kind of funny. Like, oh, I didn't realize that you weren't really that bad, but you're still Warroad, so I still hate you.
So you're still wondering about.
So yes and no to the bad blood. It's it's a kind of a fun. Didn't really realize, the uniqueness of it until I moved and went to college and moved here. And like people
everybody knows about it.
Oh, I didn't realize, And well, I guess I can't remember what year it was, but one year they came and did a big documentary on the Roseau Warroad rivalries. There's cameras all. I mean, there was at times too, especially when we would have guys that would be drafted or whatever. They'd come do stuff on them. But yeah, it was kind of a cool thing. And you look back on it, that's just what life is, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, that's not. It's a pretty unique, cool thing that a town of 2,600 is competing with the Adinas of the world, who have hundreds of thousands, and they're recruiting on top of it. And it's
so,
like,
I swear we'll talk about fishing here in a second here, but I was just gonna ask, because you just mentioned the fact that Roseau's only got about 2,600 people in it, and our town has got like 4,000 people in it. Now I know Roseau's got some industry there, some big time industry, but like how does a small town like Roseau develop a program that big and that competitive, whereas like a town like this one, which is almost twice the size, struggles to compete and to get into the state tournament when they have to run up against like a Warroad or somebody like that?
That is a great question, and I think people have been asking that for years and years, and a lot of it just comes to the culture. Like growing up, pretty much everybody at least tried hockey.
Okay.
Like you're gonna at least try it, and like you might not love it, you might not play, so it might, but like everyone at least tried skating. You know,
so it's really strongly encouraged, right?
Yeah. So that's a big part of it too, and like the community buys in, and when there's been such a history, you know, growing up, you saw all the guys that either went pro or played in the Olympics, or you hear all these stories, and it's just kind of like this cool like hype about it of like, wow, that's a pretty cool thing, and everybody wants to be that next professional hockey player, or go, you know, play in college or whatever it might be. And you know, obviously I was more on the baseball side of things, but still hockey was so fun and just a unique experience for sure. Is
there a lot of outdoor rinks there and stuff like that too for people to use, or
not as much on the outdoor rinks? That is one thing that's pretty unique about Roseau, is there is 3 rinks that are pretty much, you know, especially the North rink, we called it. That one was like open 24 hours a day, basically. And like, you know, I'm talking to people from the cities or whatever, and they're like, oh my gosh, we had to pay hundreds of dollars to get an hour of ice time. And now we're like, oh, well, we would go up at midnight and play a pickup game whenever we wanted. And we just stay overnight there almost, because we just play hockey at all hours of the night. And so, yeah, that's a pretty unique thing. There are a couple outdoor rinks, but not like, they're more in some of the smaller towns close by, and that's not as big of a thing because there is so much accessible ice time indoors, you know. So, yeah.
So your thing was hockey and baseball, well, baseball more than hockey, and now you're into fishing. I mean, I know you have a day job, right? But, but so what was your kind of earliest memory of fishing, and, you know, where did you go, and who kind of showed you the ropes and all that?
Yeah, I mean, I was growing up fishing my whole life. I actually grew up on the Roseau River. You know, it's just a gigantic river. Okay. No, it's not. It's a tiny little river flowing through Roseau. And so
what does it flow into?
That one is kind of a crazy, I'd have to go back and look for sure. It flows into, I think, the Red, maybe. Okay. Don't quote me on this. People are going to probably be mad if they're like, oh, no, it's not. But I think it ends up in like Hudson Bay, or ends up, you know, in the whole grand scheme of things, kind of crazy. So a tiny little river. Yeah. So grew up on that. We had this we started out with actually an inflatable raft, me and my neighbor Dave. And we fished the river as far as we could go in a day with a little electric motor, you know, which wasn't very far. Yeah. Then graduated to this little 12-foot aluminum boat that my dad let me keep on the river. We just keep it docked, and with a little 2-horse Johnson. Yeah. Then we'd sometimes be able to get all the way up. If we took a full day, we could get up to this area called like the Government Dam, which, you know, we couldn't get over unless we portage. But so we fished that every day, probably the same stretches every day all summer. Yeah. You know, and we were just catching northerns. Every once in a while, catch a walleye, or one time I caught a smallmouth in this little tournament on the river. It was just the coolest thing. Yeah.
And, how old are you when this is all going on?
Oh boy, probably from 6 on. Like, okay. And then every once in a while we go. So Roseau's so close to Lake of the Woods, and so we would go fish Lake of the Woods, especially ice fishing. Ice fishing was a lot more prominent for my dad and I, and so my dad would always take us out ice fishing, but also in the summer. We had this older boat, so depending on if it was working or not, we'd be able to get out. And so you don't want to get stranded out on Lake of the Woods with a boat that's not working. And so, yeah, pretty much since I can remember, we were fishing the river a lot, and then whenever we could get out on Lake of the Woods. And ice fishing was a little more accessible just because it's a little cheaper to get snowmobiles or drive your pickup out and fish. And so, yeah, I was doing that on Lake of the Woods for my whole life, you know, and that was... Moving to here was a very different transition. You know, I went to college in Grand Rapids for a couple of years, and then over to Mayville State, and didn't do nearly as much fishing just because I didn't have a boat, and having between playing baseball and doing school, it was not a lot of time.
Okay, so you played some college ball then too?
Yes, yep. So played at Task Community College for 2 years, and then transferred to Mayville State and played for my last, I guess it was 3 years with red shirts from some surgeries and all that sort of fun stuff. So yeah, I ended up there for a while, and then that's where I met my wife. We were both in education classes together, and then we met through a thing called Crew, Campus Crusade for Christ. So we had just like a college ministry. We kind of met through that. Oh, okay. And we basically from there, we spent the next couple of years doing school together, got engaged, got married, went up to Roseau, back home to my home, to student teach. Then we were looking for jobs. We're like, where do we want to be? You know, like, where could we see ourselves? And there's talks about Roseau, but my family has seasonal campers in Akeley, kind of in that area on a lake. And so we're like, we really like lakes area. Like, we could see ourselves being there. So we started looking for jobs and applied at Grand Rapids and applied in Park Rapids. And we had the Park Rapids interviews first. And so my wife was a teacher originally first as well. Okay. So we got the jobs, moved down to Park Rapids, and yeah, so we both were in it for about 3 years. I was teaching 3rd grade. She was teaching 2nd grade. And then we got about 3 years into it, and we're spending a lot of time at the school, and we're like, I don't know how sustainable this is going to be for our lives, and once kids get into the mix, and so she actually was like, yeah, maybe teaching isn't my thing. So she stopped teaching, and worked a couple different things, like worked at Edward Jones for a little while with the Pikes over there, and then actually started her own photography business.
Okay.
And so that just kind of took off. So now she's doing photography full time.
Really?
That same year, I transitioned out of the classroom and then switched to elementary phy ed. I had another degree. So I luckily had both degrees, so it worked out as a pretty seamless transition. And kind of around the same time, I started my guide service. I kind of jumped into that a little too quick, if you would ask me, just because I was like, this is a very different area to fish than Lake of the Woods. Lake of the Woods.
So that was really, easy. I was going to say, like, Lake of the Woods is like a completely different animal,
right?
Yeah.
Lake of the Woods is like, for lack of better words, it can be a very easy fishery, which makes it super appealing. And that's why so many people enjoy going up there. You can go fish some of the flats as long as you're in the right depth. You're going to catch fish. We fished heavy jigs, and like that was just what you did. And you could go and catch fish and be very successful. And so I was like, oh yeah, this walleye thing isn't so bad. And then I moved here and started fishing some walleye leagues, and I'm like, I've got a lot to learn. This is a different beast. Walleyes can be in the weeds, and walleyes can be suspended. And for the advent of forward-facing sonar obviously has helped a lot too, just uncovering some of these kind of mysteries of what these walleyes were doing midsummer or whatever it is. And so basically spent the next 5 or 6 years. I don't know how many years I got. I'd have to go back and look for sure, but guiding in the summertime. So I did a little bit in the winter too, but that just got so hard when I was teaching. Like 2 days on the weekend, and usually just want to play a little catch up or film a video or
just sit inside the house and drink hot chocolate.
Right, exactly. And so we started guiding for that during the summertime. It's pretty heavy. Transitioned into that. It was like, I don't know if you want to hop into that next transition, if you want me to just keep rolling or whatever you prefer. I did that for 6 or 7 years. It was great, super fun. Started my second or third year. I was like, I'd like to learn some of the social media things or some of the, other ways to get business for my guide service. And so I started a YouTube channel. I'd always been interested in like the filming and the editing, and I'm not like the most artistic as far as like music or other type of creative arts, I guess. That my wife is awesome at all that, and I'm not. She took all the talent in that, but I've always had a passion for that. I used to always film my duck hunts when I was in North Dakota and film all these things, and never really did much with them. But I was like, maybe I should start trying this. And part of it was I had gotten the forward-facing sonar Garmin Live Scope, and there's not a lot out there on it at the time.
Okay, so forward-facing sonar Garmin Live Scope is
Live
that?
Scope.
Yep. Live Scope. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a hot topic right now in the fishing world. If you want to get people fired up, start talking that. Or
what is it?
It's a new type of sonar that essentially they call it forward-facing sonar because typical sonar goes directly underneath, and you can see whether it's like a flasher if you've ever been ice fishing with a Vexlar, or even like a 2D sonar where you can tell the depth of the lake and you can see the little arcs from the fish. Now this is like live imaging, so it's happening real time, and now they're getting it where you can go out 100 feet, 140 feet, and you can pan it any direction. You can see where fish are. You can cast right to them. Essentially, is the idea behind it. And so it really helped me being in a new area, learning how to fish new lakes. For my first few years of guiding, I didn't have it. It wasn't out yet. That was just, putting in the time, and there's people paying you to put them on fish, and there was a lot of long, basically sun up to sundown being on the water, and it was great. It was great. It was stressful at times, but it was great because it made you learn. But then now, introducing the forward-facing sonar, that really expedited the learning process, because now you can see where these fish are. You can see how they're reacting to baits. You can see, some of the coolest things.
How can a sonar show you how it's reacting to a bait?
Because you can see how the fish moves. Like if I move my jig, because you can actually see your jig as you're casting.
Okay.
You can see that falling down, so I can see if they follow it. This is
so you can watch yourself fish. Okay.
Yeah. So you can see that falling in real time. You can see how the fish reacts to it. And now, I've spent a lot of hours looking at it and watching it and learning it, and a lot of times I can pick up which direction this fish is facing, so I kind of know the direction to cast to try to get it out in front of it, and see.
Wow.
So it's
so precise.
Very much, especially when you're talking bigger fish. When you're looking, say, at like a school of crappies in the winter, like that's just going to show up as big blobs. Not as easy to tell what direction they're facing. But one of my favorite things to do right now is to, these walleyes will, especially the big walleyes, suspend over open water, and so they'll be sitting over 50 feet of water, but they'll be down 10, 20 feet. And so they're just roaming out there chasing like ciscos predominantly, or maybe smelt, depending on what the forage base is for those bigger walleyes. And you can cast these big like plastics, or, if you need to downsize a jig and a crawler, and you just cast it to them, and you can watch them react. You can see, okay, they need a faster presentation. They need to really slow it down. You can kind of learn some of those things. And sometimes you'll throw 100 things at these fish, and if they don't want to eat, they don't want to eat.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was a big piece into that, and also helped with the kind of the content creation side of things, because I can show that now on my videos, and there's some really cool things you can do with some of the editing.
Yeah.
Show that as you're fishing, and
so
it's
you
just
can
really,
show like the display from the forward facing sonar, and as like kind of a cut screen type thing.
Yeah, and actually now we've there's different editing techniques that's kind of cool. You can overlay it, so you take out the background of it, and you just will see the fish and the jig, and then so it's kind of a cool overlay, but that only works in certain situations.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's those sorts of things.
What's controversial about it? I mean, it seems like it's a good tool. Like,
yeah.
What would be? I mean, is it really expensive, or like?
It is expensive for sure. The controversial thing is, people think it's going to ruin the fisheries because it makes it too easy.
Oh.
I beg to differ. Sometimes it can, but sometimes without forward-facing sonar, it can be really easy depending on what you're fishing. And so that's the big thing. And
it's almost like fishing with dynamite or something.
Right, yeah. That's how they assume that, like, you plop it down, the fish are just jumping in the boat, you don't need to do anything. Is how it's perceived. And obviously I'm biased. Everyone's has their own bias. But,
sure.
For me, in all my videos too, I do the same. I preach, like, selective harvest. Like, it's okay to keep fish, but just be selective. A lot of the times the things that hurt the fisheries are people that aren't even using forward-facing sonar, and they're going out, they found a little honey hole, and they're keeping their limit after limit after limit after limit every day, giving them to their buddies. That's hurting the fishery oftentimes more than, say, somebody like myself that's going out and I'm catching fish, but I almost never keep fish nowadays. I was so sick of cleaning fish from all my guiding days that I'm like, when I catch fish, I just want to be done with it at the end. I have a video to edit. I have all that. So that's the big controversial thing. People don't like it. And that's been forever, ever since, the first Vexlar came out, this flasher, or ever since 2D sonar, side imaging. Every advent of technology, there's people that are always like, oh, that's going to ruin fishing. And, now there actually are some limitations being put on at first, specifically for like musky fishing. It's gotten a really bad name just because they're so big and so easy to see. Yeah. And then it's, again, all
so
goes
you mean
back
like
to the
there's
anglers.
like legal restrictions being put on
More
it?
so for tournaments.
Okay.
I can't say, I don't think there's any states or anything. There's DNR agencies that are continually looking at it. But there's never been, that to my knowledge, like any for sure regulations on it. But like tournaments now, there's starting to be, muskie tournaments aren't allowing it, or even bass. That was a big thing if you follow like the Bassmaster Classic's going on right now. But there's multiple leagues within bass fishing, and that's a very publicized thing. And so there's some, I think it was I'm not even going to try to say which one it was, but there's some that are now going to no forward-facing sonar, and some that are going to forward-facing sonar leagues. And so they're trying all these different things. And like I say, at the end of the day, it all just boils down to the angler's
sort of like
responsibility.
Formula One versus NASCAR or whatever.
Yeah, essentially they all have their own little rules and their own sponsors and their own thing. So I'm not super into the bass fishing side of things just because I didn't grow up doing it, but it's a huge thing. So yeah, there's a lot of drama, and I see it all the time on my social media, specifically social media, not as much on YouTube. YouTube, it's usually pretty pretty positive, just because it's the same people that are coming back and watching my videos, where the social media, obviously when reels get a little more exposure, or short form media that's so big right now, it can get a very wide audience at times. And there's been some very interesting comments on some of those things, and some ones that I've had to delete because I know my students and stuff watch some of these videos, and I'm like, they don't need to see that. I'm like, man, where are these people at when they need to comment on a random person's post and how much they hate me and how much, like, all these things? And I don't have time for that. So
that's just a symptom of having more success on YouTube, is that there's going to be the so-called haters that are going to be in there.
There's never a shortage of that. So.
Well, so like you've got the YouTube channel, you mentioned that you're chopping some of the stuff up into shorts and all that stuff. I mean, that must be a really time-consuming process, right?
And it all depends on how it's
do you
done.
Do it all yourself? Or
Yep. I've looked into doing other editors and things like that, but unless I know the person, I know they've done like fishing videos, they're kind of a unique thing, especially because I'm doing so much education. Yeah. And being an educator, I thrive on like visuals. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm trying to explain something where these fish are setting up on this specific structure, I can't expect somebody else to know how to show that on the visual side of things. So yeah, I do all of it myself, but it is very time consuming, and it kind of depends on how I go about doing. Like if I go out and I can just ice fish and sit in one spot and turn the camera on, turn the live scope on, turn my second camera on, maybe use an underwater camera or whatever, have all those synced up and just rolling, then I can kind of go through and chop up like the talking points. But yeah, it's a time consuming process. I just did a video. We went to like a little backcountry lake up in Canada fishing for lake trout. And I did it more of like a vlog style. So there was a lot of like drone footage and like some slow-mo, a little more of like the cinematic-y type stuff. Yeah. And that one took a lot longer to edit, you know, because then you're adding in the music, you're adding in all the other things and syncing all the footage, and it's, yeah.
But the more work you put into it, the better the product that you have, and probably that translates to more views and everything too.
Yes and no, actually. That's been an interesting thing. You know, for some creators, I feel like that is the case. For mine, I have, you know, kind of gotten pigeonholed, I feel like, into this education side, which I love because that's what I do, obviously, as a teacher. So if it's like a education, like I'm going to talk about walleye locations or walleye presentations or whatever it might be, that's almost guaranteed an X amount of views or whatever. But I found even if I put in time into, say, this last one that I did, it didn't necessarily get the viewership that some of those other ones did because it's maybe not as search based. And it's not, people want that quick information where it's a little bit longer videos, like 40 minutes long versus like 15 to 20 that a lot of mine typically are. And so yeah, it's definitely a different thing. And it's one of those things I started as a way to kind of grow my guide business. And I was like, oh, well,
it became the business.
Well, yeah. And then I was like, I didn't even really realize you could make money with that. And then, you know, now companies were reaching out. And it's like, I got to learn all this really quick because I don't know. Luckily, I've got a couple buddies that have been doing it for a lot longer, been in like the TV side of things as well. And, you know, so I have a lot of people that I can say like, hey, how do I do this? Like, because I'm kind of an old codger when it comes to a lot of this. Like, I'm not very, I don't know if tech savvy would be the right word because I'm pretty good around the tech side of things and I've had to learn. But it's more like
the business side of it, or
not even business, just like what's trending, or like those. Like if I wasn't doing this, I would probably delete all my social media and just go fish and do my thing. But now, obviously, when I realize, okay, I can start to do this as a side business and make some extra money and get paid to fish, and wow, that's, you know, everybody that loves fishing, that's their dream, is to do that.
Get paid to fish, right?
So yeah, and for a lot of years, that was not the case. I was paying a lot of money to fish, you know, and I was paying a lot of money to make videos, and I knew I had kind of a long end sight, and so that was a big part of it too. Just realizing like this isn't going to happen overnight, and you've got to put in a lot, just like anything, you know, whether it's podcasts, whether it's whatever it is, you know, if you're starting a business, you got to put in a lot of time. Yeah, you got to put in a lot of energy and oftentimes a lot of money before it really starts reaping the benefits. And then people look and be like, oh, it must be so nice to be able to go on your trip and get paid to fish.
They don't see the
what about the first 5 years where I was forking over money to buy equipment and, you know, fish, and it's easy to see the outcome of it just in any sort of thing, and not realize what all goes in. But now, given there's still a long ways to go for myself, what I would like, some of my dreams and some of my where I would like to be, some of my vision, long ways to go yet, but still fun starting to see like, okay.
And it's such a good thing that you're a young guy too, so you still have a lot looking forward. Well, yeah.
But don't tell my students that. They think I'm the oldest man alive.
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, it's funny. You ask the kids if how old do you think? Some will say 70, some will say 10, some will say, you know, I work in the elementary, so it's so funny.
70.
Yeah, it's all over the board.
Yeah. So you're making educational style videos on, and by the way, your YouTube channel is just TJERICKSON.
Yep,
right?
TJ Erickson. Yeah, Erickson. For the longest time it was TJ's Guide Service, but again, transitioned out of that.
So but now you're at TJ. Okay, so describe the difference between an educational style video and then maybe say some other kind of fishing video.
Yeah, I mean, that's, everyone's kind of got their own thing. Some people do more like the adventure, like the storytelling, where they're like stopping at a gas station and showing you that process, and we're going on this trip, and we're that's kind of the whole story behind it, and the whole story is the adventure. And like I said, a lot more into that storytelling. Where me, I have a very specific thing where I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to talk about early season walleye locations. So when the water temps are between this and this is where they're going to be. This is where they were. This is where they're going. This is why they're going to be there. This is how you catch them. That's a lot of what I do, specifically walleyes, because that's one of my favorites. And that's one of the ones that does the best, because there's a lot of walleye anglers in Minnesota.
People want that walleye, right?
And it's really cool. And honestly, part of it is really cool for me, because that's what when I moved here, that's what I was watching, because I was like, I need to learn how to do this stuff. This isn't natural to me. And so I started doing that. And so that's a lot more. I do like doing some of those more, like, I guess you would call it like a vlog style, where it's more storytelling. I do really like that style too. It just takes more work. And it's not necessarily where I've been kind of pigeonholed in the YouTube world. They like, YouTube likes to put people in a box in the fact of, and not for bad reasons, but they want people to get the content that they're looking for. So if I put out 5 videos and they're all education based, YouTube starts to learn, like, hey, these people, whether they're subscribed or not, but they love your videos. They watch them. They watch them for a long time or whatever. So then I'm going to keep recommending them to them. Now, if I do a different style of video, it pushes out to those people and they're like, this isn't very interesting to me because I'm not getting education from it or whatever. So then YouTube's like, well, this must not be a good video because people aren't watching it. And sometimes it'll get into that other aspect of, like, okay, gets into some of the ice camping. I've done a few of those videos, and that that can get into a different crowd. And so trying to stay within my realm, but also like not getting stuck. And I enjoy doing all of those other, and I enjoy
probably means making more videos, right? Is that the idea?
Yes and no. Just being very selective, or being very, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but being very selective with the videos that I'm doing, so I can be as efficient as possible in producing the video. Especially now, we just had our first child in December. And so
congratulations.
Thank you. So that's obviously complicating things as far as time goes.
They're getting in the way of your fishing.
I know, right? How dare they? So she's been awesome. She's been a huge blessing. But both my wife and I know, like, we've been able to run with our businesses. With her photography, with my guiding, and now YouTube, like, we've been able to just like go. We spent all hours of the night up editing, or spent, and we could do that together because we were both growing our businesses. And now we're like, okay, how's this summer going to look? How are we going to work through this? And how are we going to, obviously she has a lot of flexibility, so we don't have to do daycare, but now that provides, more scheduling, things to navigate as well. So it'll be interesting to see. And, there's a certain thing of whether it's contracts with companies, wherever I have hit a certain quota of videos. This year I kind of renegotiated to get more flexibility with that. So now it's like a yearly count versus like per month. Because then it's also
fishing kind of goes up and down too, right?
And so that was always challenging. Like, this time of year specifically, right now it's March, like, this is not, like, if you post an ice fishing video right now, it's not going to do nearly as well.
Well, this is why I try to catch you at this time of year, because I figured it was kind of the downtime where it's like the ice is almost out and we haven't had the opener yet, or the opener is still a couple months away, right?
So typically if I film videos, like I filmed a few burbot videos recently, and I'm going to save them for next year because they'll do 3, 4, 5, 10 times better than they would.
Timing is everything,
especially with fishing.
So interesting. We actually interviewed an MD from Park Rapids here about ticks. And when the first time we released it, it was, it wasn't probably the height of wood tick season. But then I just kind of I re-promoted it on the Facebook site, and it was like we got like almost equal to the number of views it already had, just because they were coming into tick season. So timing is super important.
Right? Absolutely. And that's
not that we're not trying to get a whole, this is like a hobby for us and we love it, but but it's just kind of interesting to see how those trends or patterns that you see can really start to work, and when you put a lot of thought into it.
Conversations that I had to have with some of these companies too, of like, hey, yes, I might not be getting any videos out, say in March or April or whatever it might be, but I will still get the same amount by the end of the year, but they're going to do much better for you guys and for myself, you know, because
people aren't necessarily thinking about fishing at this.
I'll admit, I'm like checked out of ice fishing. I'm so ready to be in the boat, and like I still have one trip left, but you know, we're and that is another thing I can even talk about too, is another aspect. So there's the more vlog educational style, and then there's the more vlog entertainment, and then there's the education. And one thing we started doing a little bit more of, and there's been some of the YouTubers that I watch up in Canada specifically, they're awesome. They do some really cool things, but doing some of these competitions, that's been a big thing in the fishing world. And obviously there's like the real competitions is like the Bassmasters or the National Walleye Tours or some of those. But for us now, we can make So like my buddy Nick Lindner, Brett McComas, they're more in Brainerd. They do stuff for YouTube. And so now last year we did we called it the Walleye Cup.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just a fun competition that we were able to do.
Just between
to kind of collaborate.
Fellow YouTubers and yeah.
Yep. And people love it. I love watching those videos. The guys in Canada have done some really cool ones.
Yeah. So what does it entail? Like, what is it, the Walleye Cup?
Every year is, well, we just started this, so we're still learning on what we would like to do. But like every year is going to be a little bit different. Like open water, that one we split it up into 3 periods. Like your biggest 5 walleyes for each period won the competition. And then my buddy Brett found this. It's awesome. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek prize, but it's also really cool. It's a mug, a cup, the walleye cup. This guy took a mold of a 32-inch walleye and molded it so the face of the cup is this walleye, and it's got the handle. It's like the coolest thing ever. So it's like half outrageous.
Is it like a one of a kind type of thing?
We tried to because we had so many people reach out like, hey, we want to buy one. Like we'd love. So like, oh, maybe we should like do something like this. But we can't even find the guy that made it. He bought it on eBay, and it was like the only one made. And so I won the first walleye cup, so I have it. And like every time I use it, I'm like, I don't want to drop this thing.
Well, you better get it 3D printed or whatever. Get it scanned or whatever.
Exactly. So that's been kind of a cool thing too. Just some of the competition side of things, and it just can keep things fresh. And especially when you can do it with other people that have done some of the YouTube things, is they have an audience, I have an audience, and it can kind of combine all of our audiences. And, it's beneficial for all of us.
That's
and it's just
collabing, right?
Yeah,
isn't that what they call that?
Yep, absolutely. And so, it's been kind of a fun thing. So we've got a lot of ideas in the works. And, obviously you need time to do all those too. And those guys are doing more of the content thing or the fishing industry in general more full-time than I am. I'm teaching as well. But still really cool to be able to have those opportunities and just do something a little different and something unique. And there's always research to be done, just watching, people that make videos on YouTube that aren't even in the fishing realm. We get lots of ideas from that. We talked about, there's some of these kayak even anglers that do these uncut videos where it's like 4-6 hours straight of them just fishing. And so we've done a couple of these. Nick and myself have done those.
He's like, what's the application? I mean, it's like just people just have that on in the background? Is that
and so now
nobody's sitting there watching for 6 hours, right?
They are, honestly. Like some of them are. And a lot of times what we see, because we did some research on this,
pop some popcorn and say, hey, let's sit down on the couch and watch 6 hours of a guy.
That's why I was like hesitant right away. I was like, no, nobody has time to do this. But then there's people that are commenting like, hey, I have maybe not a terminal illness, or like, hey, I got injured and I'm laid up on the couch for like, this is what's getting me through. Like, I can't get out and fish, but I'm watching, or they might have it on the background. But, I think YouTube starts to push those as well because they want people on the platform as long as they can.
Yeah.
So it'll come up as like the next suggested video if people just have it on. So I think, this is my personal opinion, I don't know if it's true, I think that skews the statistics a little bit just because it might automatically go to that video because it's going to be longer. They want people to stay on for longer, so But it's still a really cool thing, and people love them.
How much thought do you put into the different platforms and like what the landscape might look like in say 5 years or 10 years? Because like it seems like now everything is short videos, right? I mean, it's starting probably. Well, there was something called Vine a long time ago, and then really TikTok came in and started eating everybody's lunch, right? And so then. Now Instagram with their Reels and Facebook with their, I think those are called Reels there too, right? Or something like that. Yep. But they all are kind of playing catch up. And then YouTube came in with Shorts. Yep. And just from our friend Jake Jones, we learned that they came up with a way of monetizing Shorts that was different than what the other platforms were doing, Yep. So, but I mean, for a content creator like you who's pushing out a lot of contracts, you're serious about it, and pushing out a lot of content under contract and stuff like that, being serious about it. How much like cross-platform stuff do you do, or are you more tied into one? And then how much thought do you put into sort of like looking around the corner and say, hey, I better get on whatever this is, because if I need to always be where. Right. The kids are, or whatever, as they say.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And truthfully, the nice thing is you can just repurpose content. So like my videos, I'll find like the high points or like some drama or something silly that happened, or like where I messed up, and I'll find some of those high points and I can repurpose those. So then I can post that as short form too. And honestly, for the longest time, it was just doing it on Instagram for Reels, and I didn't even post those on Facebook, even though I could just put, click it so I can go to both.
Thing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I should have been doing that a little bit more, but had more of the, I guess, success, you could say, on Instagram. And so that's where I started doing that. And I begrudgingly made a TikTok just because with some of the other guys that I know that are doing media stuff, I talked to them and they're like, you already have the content, like, just do it. I'm like, but I don't really like TikTok. It's like rotting our kids' brains. And so I feel like then I'm part of the problem. So it's just like, but also
how is TikTok rotting the kids' brains any more than anything else?
I know.
Exactly. I mean, I always was wondering about that. And, I mean, I've heard people say that TikTok gets such a bad rap because they basically came over and just outperformed the other, the existing, they disrupted the industry, right?
Yeah. No, for sure. And I would say for my content specifically, I don't often reach, the people that do really well are reaching like the kids, they're like loving it. Typically the 10 to 15 year olds, they're not super interested in like educational walleye content. There's a few that are. So like, I wouldn't say I'm reaching that, but there's some other things, just some of these ridiculous things that happen that I made it into short form media and it's done really well. But it's talking about, going back to the question of which platforms, my primary thing is YouTube. And the other stuff is just extra. And now seeing some of the success that some of the short form media has brought, I have been a little more intentional about doing that. And then on top of that, there's some companies that have been like, hey, we value that. We want you to create X amount of reels for us for the year, or, we want to use your same reels. And so there's like, wording in the contracts for that kind of thing too. So my primary focus is YouTube, and then I will take some of my content that I've already made and repurpose it for reels, unless every once in a while I'll get like a bug of an idea, or like I was out fishing this last summer, for example. Wasn't filming a YouTube video. I was out chasing suspended walleyes. The bite was pretty good. My wife was floating on the tube in the back, and I was like, calm day, sunny day, so you could see the walleyes. It was a clear lake. So I'm like, I got to do this. So I just did a short little thing where I filmed the fish, the rod bent over, filming the fish in the water, and then flip over to my wife laying on her tube. And I caption it like when you're both living your best life or something. And that did really well. You know, like, so there's those types of things too, where if there's a little idea that I have, like sometimes now that I'm getting into it more, I start to have more of those ideas where initially I did not. But just also.
So you're becoming an influencer.
Oh, I don't know. People, I don't. That's what in some of these contracts it's worded like that, and I was like, no, not really. Like it's like all those sorts of things. So it's definitely a world that I never anticipated being in.
Yeah, and it's got to be exciting.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's can be exhausting too. Especially because I'm a go kind of person. Like I always want to be doing something. I always want to make the next thing. So YouTube is dangerous for that.
Right.
And so I have to be very intentional, and my wife helps keep me in check. And honestly, it's something that I've kind of shared with, we have a small group from our church that meets at our house, and been very intentional with sharing that with those guys. Like, hey, if I just want to do my things, like I go. And there's always another thing. It's not like a typical 9-to-5 job where once I check out, then I'm good and I can just go do my thing. Like there's always ideas popping in my head. There's always the next video to film. Like, I have a couple hours, I'm gonna go film a video, or there's always a video to edit. And so I really have to do my best to keep that in check and to keep margin in my life, because otherwise it's
some time for yourself.
Exactly. And just for making sure I'm there, and especially now for our daughter, and wanting to still put a lot of effort into our marriage, and because that's a thing that can just easily get pushed to the side if you're both pushing, or you're making this your idol essentially. So just really keeping that in check too, and really being wise about how I'm doing that. And it's hard because this culture promotes it so much, and not that it's a bad thing. Like growing up even more in northern Minnesota, the hard work has just been driven into my brain. Like, hey, you have to work hard, which is a great principle, but now there's no shut off. I can always do the next. So it's really hard to turn that off at times, because also I enjoy it. I love it. It's so much fun to do and make fishing videos, and I'm out fishing, and all of a sudden, the excitement of catching a fish, and then now you get it on video, and you have 4 cameras rolling, and there's always something that goes wrong. Yeah. And when all those cameras are working and you get all the footage, it's like just amps it up to the next level of like, oh my gosh, this was so cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's something that I continually have to keep in check. Because I am such a go person. If you look around, look at a lot of the guys that are making fishing YouTube videos or that are tournament walleye fishing. Like,
it's all the same, right? Most of them have that. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of them maybe don't have families. Because in order to do it, you got to commit so much time to it, and having a family does not necessarily jive with that all the time. So always balancing that and keeping my priorities straight of like, yes, I want to pursue this, and yes, it would be awesome if this was full time at some point, but keeping in mind that like there's a lot more things that are more important than that I need to keep as a priority. And if this works out, if I can find that balance of pushing hard for this, but also keeping the important things more important, essentially is what it kind of boils down to on that.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, I mean, it seems like AI is something that just has permeated every single aspect of our society, and you can't go, it seems like 5 minutes into a conversation with people these days about anything before some mention of AI gets made. What kind of impacts has AI had on fishing or fishing videos or fishing education? And are you using any of those type of techniques and integrating into the work that you do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have just dabbled with a few things here and there. Honestly, that would be probably something that I could really lean into for like taking the best parts out of my videos and turning them into shorts, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So as far as like, there's a lot of stuff that people have to be mindful of, like, is this even real? I don't think that's really permeated into fishing a whole lot, just because even with AI, I think it's very hard to recreate, some of the things that are going on with fishing, the rods, the forward-facing sonar, there's so many pieces.
Yeah.
Not saying that it won't get there, but I haven't noticed it. Part of being a creator is also consuming in a good way of like, what are other people doing? What's working for people?
You have to do that. Yeah. I mean, that'd be like a musician that didn't listen to any other, musicians playing their music. Yeah.
So yeah, in all the stuff that I've consumed, I haven't seen a lot of AI stuff as far as like, ooh, is this legitimate? Is this not? I would say AI has more so been into like making things more efficient. Like I said, taking a long form cutting, or like podcasts, like guys that do podcasts. A couple of the podcasts that I've done, they've said they have some software that takes out what they predict is the viral parts or like the most interesting parts and creating it into shorts for them.
A software will just do that.
Yeah. Yep. And so like there's those types of things. So there's all these pieces. I haven't done a lot of it as far as like some of, I would say more so maybe a little bit on the editing side of things, like whether it's trying to get out the wind noise if there's some bad audio.
Yeah.
Like there's AI that can do that now. Or I also do some contracted photography work for some fishing companies as well. So AI can help with that. Like if all of a sudden, like I was doing some pictures for a company this winter and there's an orange bucket that I did not realize was in the background. I'm like, oh, are you kidding me? Like this nice picture, and then there's just this orange L&M bucket. Like, no, not knocking L&M, love it, but not always the most, visually appealing thing. And so being able to just like, okay, I can highlight it and it just automatically removes it, and AI can
fill in
what's there. And, not always great. Or I was just actually going to I just did something with some pictures. We went to the Columbia River, my dad and I, over in Washington. It was like a kind of bucket list trip. They have giant walleyes over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ridiculously big, and nobody really fishes them. But my dad got Bell's palsy right before it. So the one side of his face was kind of drooped. His eye was drooped. And so I can use some AI stuff to help fix some of those in the editing of the photos. So as far as the fishing videos and the content, I haven't noticed it a lot in my consuming, and it's more so the efficiency side of things, of making it your life easier, making you be able to be more productive. And those are going to be the benefits that I think. And as it continues to progress, just being mindful of, there is one other thing that I just thought of as I was talking. I'm a little bit of a squirrel, if you can't tell. Like my brain goes 100 miles an hour. But being able to like write scripts, like, hey, what is a script for early walleye locations? And they'll come up with something. Typically, those haven't been as accurate for me because like there's very specific things.
But it's a starting point.
Or like give me a outline of a trip to whatever, and it'll kind of give you some ideas. And so those are another thing that AI can be very helpful with, or even coming up with names for our competition series, coming up with, like just putting that into Chat GPT and like gave you a bunch of them. Most of them were not good. And
right, but there could be a few of them that were good.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing is I've found about AI is that like you just challenge it and it seems to meet, I mean, maybe not exceed your expectations, but it seems to at least meet your expectations on just about anything. Like, how do I cook, this dish? Or, give me a, like you say, give me a script for a video about, frogs or something, and it'll give it to you.
Right.
And it's not always it's definitely never the end point if you're trying to produce quality work, but it takes out, I think, a lot of just sort of that early stage setup type process thinking that goes into a lot of jobs that the sort of the tedious stuff, and it can free you up to really just focus on what you're good at, which is create like being you who you are and sharing the knowledge that you have, but without having to get into all the preliminaries or even think about some of that stuff. So it's really interesting too. And I mean, I'm sure like I just the thought of it like, okay, well, what if I'm a beginner walleye fisherman, and I want to fish on in this general area in Minnesota. You type that in there, it'll probably give you some decent tips, right? Maybe not all wonderful tips, but at least they get you started in the right spot.
For sure. Yeah, it's pretty incredible what is out there, and just some of the things that it can do, and obviously with limitations. But yeah, it's still pretty impressive, and I'm looking forward to the efficiency side of things. Obviously, everyone's got their things they're scared about or nervous about, but as far as like the efficiency and productivity and being able to spend more time with family now, because like those things I'm excited about, because I think there's a lot of opportunity and potential there for some really cool things to make it easier on myself. And I honestly could see it eventually like you learning and editing how you edit, and it could edit a video for you. Like my wife uses editing software, or uses some AI software for her photography. Like when she goes and shoots a wedding, she can first put it into a culling software, so it takes a lot of the duplicates and picks out the best one or the best 5 if there's 20 pictures. And gets rid of the rest. So that makes culling so much easier.
Oh yeah, and I mean just the amount of time it would save you to do that.
For sure, and even doing like a base editing, it learns how she edits, and then it will edit the rest of the pictures.
It'll mimic
like
the way
that.
she likes to do
and
it.
It's not great. She still has to go in, but it'll give her a good base for some of that. So there's all those things that can help be a lot more productive and efficient. And one thing I've seen, I listen to a few podcasts for like YouTube specific, and one of the things they always say is like AI cannot create, it can only essentially mimic what's already out there, the information that's already out there. So because there's all these questions about like, are the creators now going to be obsolete because they can, it's like, well, they can still, AI still cannot create out of nothing. It still has to have a base of information that it gets it from. And so there's always going to be space for the creatives, for the, people that are doing stuff like this, and, all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, because even if the AI could mimic like, let's say like whatever your best video is, right? And an AI had distilled out like sort of what the things were about that video that were so great, and then it created a new video that was sort of that had all those same highlights and everything, and then it packaged it and put it out on Fishbot posts. I don't think it would be as popular. I mean, even though it had all the same elements that your video had, because I think at some point people don't want to just watch something that a computer has generated, right? I mean, isn't part of the whole experience of watching videos having a connection, like sort of with the real person that's creating the video, and seeing it and saying, wow, that's something that's actually happening out there in the real world that I could do too, and I see what he's done, and here he is on a lake and he's really catching fish, as opposed to like say the same person saying like, I'm watching the exact same content, but I know it's not real,
Oh yeah.
There's just something about the humanity of the creator that makes it appealing, whereas if somebody knows it's AI, it wouldn't. Like, it's just like those same images that, you can tell it's an AI image. It's a great, like you put in a chat thing like, show me a picture of like pigs flying, through Paris or something, and it,
it's incredible
whatever your mind happens to come up with at that moment, and you look at it, you're like, wow, that's really cool, but it's not as impressive because you know that it wasn't created by a human being.
the authenticity isn't there for sure. And obviously we're made to have connection with other humans, like, and that's a big part of it. I even see like the guys that I watch, you know, now I've gotten to know a few of them, so it is a legitimate relationship there, but like you still feel like you know them like on a personal level, and it's like that's what happens when people, or that's like the desire.
That's the magic,
once you get
right?
to there, then it doesn't really matter what you put out, because people just want to watch you, or people just want to, you know, see what you're doing because they find you entertaining or whatever it might be.
And that's when you've crossed the bridge from being an educator to an influencer.
Right. Right, exactly.
All right, so just a few general things. This area here that we're in Park Rapids, Minnesota. We've got so many different great places to fish, well, you know, from basically all 360 degrees of, you know, that you can go up, down, left, right, you know, whatever. What would you say, I mean, if somebody was from, like, I don't know, from Atlanta, Georgia or something, and they're saying, well, we were thinking about coming up to this area to do some fishing, like how would you describe it, or what would you tell them about it?
Yeah, and obviously those are conversations that I had a lot, because we would get clients from all over when I was guiding. And I would say one of the huge benefits to this area is it is like a multi-species mecca, essentially. Like you can go out and catch anything. So when I grew up fishing on Lake of the Woods, like some of the best walleye fishing literally in the world. Right. But very rarely am I going to catch crappies unless I go up to the Canadian side, or smallmouth bass, or, you know, here it's like you can go out on a given lake and you can have good fishing of so many species. So it's like whatever you prefer, whatever your style is.
A lot of variety.
Yeah, and so that's, you know, maybe specifically walleye fishing now, like maybe that's not like world class, although we have a lot of big walleyes in our waters, which is kind of a unique thing. But it might not be, you're not going to go out and catch 100 walleyes in a day. Right. Yeah. Hardly ever. But you could also go out, catch walleyes and catch smallmouth and catch crappies all in the same area, all in the same day. Right. And I think that's a huge appeal. And I was just actually having, you've had him on for Derek Rickey. Just having a conversation with him the other day, and we were just talking, you know, commerce stuff or whatever, tourism. And we were talking how that lends itself so well to being a family area. And like, so if you want to come up and you want your kids to have a good experience and like catch fish, and they're not like diehard walleye anglers or diehard pike, you know, whatever it is. And there's so many other things in the area that can be so beneficial for families. Yeah. And so it's a great family area because there's so many opportunities. And, you know, when I'm thinking like Lake of the Woods, Devil's Lake, even Leech Lake, there's like a big destination, a big body of water, whatever it might be for a specific. And we don't necessarily we are a destination, but not for one lake or for one thing. There's a variety of things. And I would say the same thing with the fishing. Like, there's opportunities. Leech Lake isn't that far away either. You know, like there's all these opportunities that are out there. So
Leech Lake's only about half an hour away from
Yes,
here, right?
and very good fishing. So many lakes, almost too many lakes to choose from at times. You know, that was one of the hard things guiding. Like, where am I going to go today?
Yeah, where do you start, right?
Yeah, so, but which also, you never get bored. You know, if you're fishing one lake and the bite's just not on that lake, and that's the only lake you have in the area, it's like kind of hard to get out and go fishing the next day if you know the bite's not been good. Where it's like, I'm going to mix it up, I'm going to do a different lake. Or there's certain lakes in the area that get hot at different times. So it's like, okay, I'm going to start on this lake. Once it gets to be June, I'm going to go to this lake. You know, all those things play an impact as well. So it's a really cool multi-species area. A lot of opportunities for a lot of different things. And yeah, very good fishing for almost any species that we can have in Minnesota.
And I mean, you said before that you and your wife were first attracted to this area from, you know, just that it's the lakes area, and that's a good thing and all that. Now your business has sort of evolved from, you know, teaching, which is still the foundation, but then getting into the videos and stuff like that. Do you see yourself sort of remaining in this area for a while? Or, I mean, are you going to get to a point where you're going to be flying all over the world and it just makes more sense for you to be living next to a major airport?
I doubt that. I mean, because even some of the guys that I know that do it, say up in Canada, and they're doing that kind of stuff. They're traveling to Winnipeg to go fly out or whatever. So we are, unless God has different plans for us, we anticipate staying in here. We love the area. Yeah. Again, those are our plans, but that's not always what's going to happen. So we love the area. We're planning on staying here. If that comes to it, we're traveling anywhere, that'd be awesome. You know, and my wife actually does a little bit of like elopement photography. So she'll have to travel for weddings. Okay. So that is a little piece of it.
I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. So like we're flying out in May here to go to Tennessee for her to shoot a wedding, and yeah, so there's all those pieces. So like in the grand scheme of things, yeah, maybe, but knowing Fargo's an hour and a half away, Bemidji's an hour, like those are well within reason as far as that kind of thing. And for me, a primary source of my content right now is specifically Minnesota, smaller lakes, education, general walleye talk. So there's not a lot
specifically Minnesota.
Yeah, okay. There's people from Wisconsin and Canada and stuff that watch. You know, I can see the demographics of the people that watch my videos, and a lot of even overseas stuff, but East Coast. But primary, my source of content is this area. So there's really not a lot of a better place to be than here for what I've created at this point.
So I'll ask you this as the last question. If you had the ability to go anywhere in the world for let's say a 1 week fishing trip that was not going to be filmed, and you could go with, like, say you and two of your closest friends, right? Two buddies, right? Describe that trip.
Oh boy. That's this one might to give you a really good answer, an honest answer. It might take a little more thought. But
what comes to mind?
There's so many things. One that keeps coming to mind is going for some of these exotic species that are specifically saltwater. There's so many saltwater fish. So I just anticipate like flying down there with a few buddies, connecting with, a guide down there in the area that has all the gear, because anytime you're going to a new spot like that, there's benefit to.
Well, you got to have those like harnesses.
And I would say not even something like that necessarily gets me going. I would say a lot of it is like being able to feel like you're interacting. If you're just like those types of fishing where they're just sitting there and they're on, whether downriggers or whatever it is, and the rod's just sitting there and all of a sudden, okay, there's a fish on. I would much more rather be able to like cast at a fish, like see it on forward facing sonar, cast to it, see it bite, set the hook, and do that whole piece instead of just like, oh, I'm going to pick up a rod and there's a fish on. So I would say there's a species called tarpon down in Florida, and there's a guy that I know that does some guiding down there. So honestly, that's a trip that I would love to have happen one day. But
sounds like it's a trip that you are maybe in the early stages of planning.
In my mind,
well, you already know the guide, right?
Right, exactly. So, and they're able to like cast at these fish and catch them on spinning gear, and they like jump crazy out of the water. My buddy Nick, one of the ones that we do some of these competitions with, he was just down catching some of them, and it's just a really, I don't know, that would be a cool bucket list thing. Otherwise, going up into Canada and going to some of these giant lake trout lakes would be another kind of a dream trip. I have a lot, so it's hard to narrow it down to one. I'm not like a guy that's like this one species, this one, but doing something different and going down south to target some saltwater would be a pretty unique or cool thing as well.
You ever think you'll get sick of fishing?
No. Everyone always said, my dad was like, when I started guiding, he's like, I'm just nervous that like it's going to take the love of fishing out for you. I was like, it didn't do that. I would say there's times where guiding got so stressful or the fish weren't biting, and I'm such like a perfectionist, I want them to catch fish, that it was like kind of took some joy out of it. But then I got a day where I could fish for fun, and it was like I had fished for the first time again. Like it's like I was going on a dream trip, because I was like, I don't have to worry about anybody else catching fish. I can fish how I want. And so I don't know. There's so many cool experiences, and I don't care how many times I catch a fish. Every time I just get so excited. So I don't think I'll ever I don't think I'll ever lose that kind of passion for it.
Well, thanks for coming on, TJ Erickson, and
thanks for having me.
Wish you best of luck to you and all your endeavors.
Yeah,
and TJ Erickson, ERICKSON, on YouTube.
Yes, it's on all my socials. It's TJ Erickson now, or maybe TJ Erickson Fishing on Instagram or something. But yeah, that's all pretty much across the board now at this point.
Thank you, TJ.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks so much.